Hi, welcome back to another episode of Easy Breezy Math, another video. My name is Christopher Brown. I've been a math teacher for almost 30 years. And what I like to do here is give a lot of math tips to teachers and also students. What I try to do is show you the better way to deliver the material. Not all the books doesn't always have great examples, and it doesn't always give the best strategies for getting students to understand the math on an intuitive level and to see what's really going on. We don't just want to do a math problem and get it right with steps. We want to be able to understand what's actually happening. So this particular video is going to be two parts. What I wanted to do is I wanted to do a video on some of the hardest concepts I know to teach in early algebra, which number one is, one of them I know from experience is just completing the square, right? Completing the square we usually do later in the year. And it's difficult because there's a lot of things, skills that we need to have, and we have to have those skills mastered before we get into doing it, right? Before we get into tackling such a problem. A lot of times we make the mistake of teaching these skills real briefly earlier in the year and then expecting students to just be able to put it all together at once. We got to spend a lot more time. We need to spend a lot more time practicing those skills before we get to a big problem like completing the square. So in this part one today, what I have is something I have the pre-completing the square drills, kind of like drills. I have a lot of problems here, believe it or not. But if you take a look at my screen or my whiteboard, I have what x equals right up here on the top. The first little skill we need to do is we're going to practice taking half of a number and then squaring it. Now, this is good for completing the square, but it's also really good for just basic number sense. Number sense is something you really want to have when you're manipulating numbers. It's always good. I love setting these up because I can do a lot of problems and it doesn't seem like a lot of work, but that's just there right there. That's 22 problems. And we're going to get through those real quick as you'll see. And what this does is it gives you just that foundation of understanding numbers, how to double them or how to take half of them. Sometimes I double numbers, that's why I say that. So how to take half from numbers. Notice there's decimals and fractions there too. So we're reviewing all those skills so that when we get to a problem like completing the square where we have to do that, we're already ready to go. Okay, so let's jump right in. I've got right up here x equals, and the first one is just x equals 10. So next we're going to write what half of x equals. So half of x will be just what? Half of 10 we know is 5, right? Half of 8 we know is 4. Starts off pretty simple. Half of 12, 6, great. What's half of 9? Now there's two different ways that you can write this. You can write it as half of, if you're not sure what it is, what I like to do say, well, what's half of 8? Most people know that's 4, and then what's half of 1? They know that's a half, so 4.5 must be half of 9. But you can also just write 9 over 2. And that means, of course, 9 divided by 2. I like to use that example, and you'll see why later as we continue with completing the square. Writing it this way makes it easier for us to move that number around and manipulate it, okay? Half of 11 will be 11 divided by 2, okay? Now, as I get to the decimal, if they give me a decimal, I'm going to give my answer as a decimal. So, as a decimal, what's half of zero point 0.8 or 80 cents? 0.4 or 40 cents. What's half of 5? Now, if you put 50 there, we've already gone that I can add zeros there, kingdom come. You want to think of that as more half of 50. And money, we'll think of half of 50 cents as 25 cents, 0.25. And then we get to the fractions. Now, this usually takes some explaining, which I do on the side. I'll have other videos that describe how to take half of a fraction. But we go through this a lot. And I do like to draw a picture and take half and then cut that in half again and then see how we actually get a half. Matter of fact, I can do it real quick. If I have a half, that's half, right? And if I cut that in half again, now what do I have? Well, I have, you guessed it, 1/4. So half of a half is 1/4. That means half of a third, I would do the same thing. But I also would say, notice what I did to the bottom. The bottom just doubled, right? And so that's what we also want to get them to use. The half of a third we'll see is 1/6. 1/6, if I can write it correctly. Half of a tenth would be 1 over 20. Okay. Now, half of 2/5, if you're really good with fractions, hopefully you can get this one. If not, you're just going to take my word for it and look this up later on. But half of 2/5 is, of course, just 1/5. So if I can take half of the top, I don't have to double the bottom. Now half of 3/8, I cannot take half of the top, so I will double the bottom here. So it'll be 3/16. So we've taken half of each number. I take half. Now I take half. The next thing I'm going to do is square those numbers. So I could have went straight down. Maybe I'll do the next row straight down. But I just wanted to go ahead and get these done. Now we're going to square each number. 5 times 5, right? And now it's, and also notice how I wrote it. It's half of the number squared. So that makes it 25. Half of 4 squared. Well, we already took half of 8. We got 4, so that's 16. I'm just squaring this number. 36. What's 9 times 9? 81. 2 times 2 over 4. That's how we square fractions. We multiply them we multiply the fraction by itself. 9 times 9 over 2 times 2, 81 over 4. 11 times 11 is 121. 2 times 2 there is 4. Now, 0.4 squared, if you set this up correctly, you should notice that 0.4 times 0.4, you're going to end up having 2 decimal places. So that's actually going to be 0.16. And that is a smaller number. You're taking a fraction of a fraction or a decimal of a decimal. Okay. Half of 0.25, 0.125, half of 1. Oh, we're not taking half anymore. We're squaring it. I apologize right there. So if I square 25, it's 625. So if I square 0.25, I'm going to actually have 0.65. And that's okay. We're all human. We can make a mistake and just keep going. So it's 0.0625. Half of 1/4. Well, we took half of 1/4. We're going to square. That's 1 over 16. We are squaring numbers now. 1 over 36. 1 over 400, 1 over 25, and 1 over, no, that's 3 times 3 is 9. 16 times 16 is, I believe, 256. So that's 9 over 256. And again, I did this twice just because I want to emphasize here, you gotta get these drills in. These are great little things to put up for a warm-up. Again, it's number sense. We can never practice enough number sense in our classrooms. They need tons of number sense, right? So now I'm going to go straight down with these, right? We could do it either way. What's half of 6? 3. And then 3 times 3 is 9. What's half of 14? 7. And then 7 times 7 is 49. Half of 16 is 8. And then 8 times 8 is 64. Now half of 7, I'll write that as 7 over 2. And then if I have it 7 over 2, I'll square that and we'll get 49 over 4. 49 divided by 4. Half of 13, 13 over 2. 13 times 13 is 169 divided by 4. Half of 15, well, that's 15 divided by 2, or 7.5, 7.5. Here, 15 times 15, 225. 2 times 2 is 4. Lots of 4s in the bottom of these answers. The denominator. Half of 0.7 is like 70 cents. Half of that, we'll get to that answer right there. That's 35. Now, when I square 35, that's a bigger number. So if I want to go quickly, what I can do here is even this. I can go and do this on a calculator later, but I'm just going to put in here 35 squared. Now, that's not cheating because as we'll see later on, it's actually better for me to have it in that form. So I have 0.35 squared. That's the answer. I don't want to sit up here and go overboard when I can just grab a calculator later on to figure out what that is. That's the correct answer, okay? Let's not get too picky over what we have for an answer. If we have a correct answer, it's a correct answer. All right. Half of 0.24 is 0.12. Now we know 12 times 12 is 144, and I'll have 2 decimal places, just like I had 1 there, I'll have 2 there. 2 plus 2 makes 4 decimal places, so it's 0.0144. Okay? Half of 1/4 is 1/8. If I square that, it's 1 over 64. Half of 1/8 then is 1 over 16. If I square that, that's 1 over 256. All right. So that's a great drill to start off doing. The next drill I want to do is creating that perfect square trinomial. I'm going to go right into it because I feel like I'm getting this videos going a little too long, longer than I had planned. I like to make the video short, so I'm just going to go right into completing the square or creating that perfect square trinomial. Okay, second big step in completing the square. So just like I did half and squared it up here, this is the number here that I need to do that to. Now, since you've practiced this, we're pretty much rehearsed on what we're going to do here. What's half of 10? We know that's 5. 5 times 5 is 25. So I need to add 25, and I've created my perfect square trinomial. If I factor that or break it apart, break it down, I know that that's x minus 5 squared. And those are the two steps we want to do in these problems. And again, these are just isolated problems. Problems. We practice them on our own. Half of 20 is 10. 10 times 10 then is 100. So we're going to add in 100. If I break it down, it's x plus 10 squared. Okay. Continuing on, half of 12, 6. 6 times 6, 36. And then we'll just have x plus 6 quantity squared. We're practicing these steps in here for completing the square. We can start practicing this. You can start this at the very beginning of the year. You don't have to wait until April or May to say, oh, it's time to do completing of the square. Let's see if we can get all this stuff in. No, no, no. We want these skills right away. We want to, as soon as we start to talk about factoring, we want to get these perfect square trinomials in. We want to learn how to create one. With half of a half, we did that up here, right? Half of a half was 1/4. So if we squared it, we get 1/16. So I'm going to add plus 1/16 here. And I know that that's x plus 1/4 squared. Okay. Half of 11. Did I do 11? I did. It's 11/2. And if I square it, it's 121 divided by 4. And then so in here, it'll be x plus 11/2 squared. Half of 9, we know is 9/2. If I square 9, did I do that? I did it already up there. And that's plus 81/4 x plus, and what was that? Just the half was plus 9/2 squared. Okay. Creating the perfect square trinomials and factoring real quick is another step in there. If they're comfortable with these steps, when we get to completing the squares, all those things, that long problem that we have to teach them, is going to become much easier. Okay. That's what we want to practice doing. We want to break things down and make it easier. All right. So again, we practice taking half and squaring it. Then we practice putting it in the form that we're actually going to see when we do completing the square. And that's going to sum it up for the first video on completing the square. Get your practice in. Make sure you like and subscribe. Stay tuned for completing the square number 2 so we can continue to see what else we should practice before we actually tackle such a big problem. All right. Thank you.